The air inside the grid, Silicon Valley's most exclusive omakase bar, didn't just smell of premium bluefin tuna and hand-grated wasabi. It smelled of old code and astronomical net worth. For Maya Thorne, the scent was a constant reminder of everything she had lost. As she moved between the sleek, minimalist tables with practiced, invisible grace, she adjusted her crisp black uniform, tucking a stray curl back into her bun. To the billionaires and venture capitalists dining here, she was just a function, a shadow in a world that preferred not to acknowledge her existence. They saw a waitress. They didn't see the woman who, 3 years ago, had been the NSA's most promising cybersecurity lead. They didn't see the master's degree in computer science or the expert who spoke 5 languages, including the complex technical dialects of high-level encryption. Maya was a ghost, haunting the industry that had scapegoated her after a security breach she hadn't committed. Now, she memorized sake pairings instead of threat vectors to pay for her mother's experimental cancer treatments and her brother's MIT tuition. The restaurant's atmosphere shifted instantly when Sebastian Vane entered. The CEO of Vane Tech didn't just walk. He processed through the room like a king granting an audience, his presence silencing conversations and making the staff stiffen with dread. Vane was known for 2 things: his revolutionary AI and his feral streak of cruelty. He sat at table 1, the power seat, and scanned Maya's name tag with a smirk that never reached his cold, assessing eyes. He saw her dark skin, her server's uniform, and her working-class hands, and he decided she would be his evening's entertainment. "You know who I am?" he asked in English, his voice dripping with a calculated, patronizing tone. When Maya replied with professional neutrality, Vane turned to his associates and began speaking in a rapid-fire mix of Mandarin and highly technical, leaked, proprietary code jargon. He assumed she was just another ignorant American with a small brain. He began a verbal assault, mocking her background and using racist barbs disguised in a language he was certain she couldn't comprehend. He demanded a preparation of sea urchin involving obscure thermal reduction techniques, threatening that if she failed to understand his superior instructions, he would ensure she never worked in the valley again. He sat back, arms crossed, waiting for the stammering apology and the public humiliation he craved. He had no idea that Maya Thorne wasn't just a server. She was the exact person who could unravel the dangerous web he'd spent years weaving. Inside the sleek, glass-walled interior of the grid, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of high-grade Wagyu and the hushed tones of multi-billion-dollar deals. For Maya Thorne, the restaurant was a place of survival where she moved with practiced grace, remaining invisible until needed. She had mastered the careful dance of serving those who looked through her, hiding her true identity behind a server's polite mask. While her hands carried heavy trays, her mind was still that of a master analyst. Maya adjusted her crisp uniform, checking her reflection. It was 9:30 p.m. on a high-stakes Saturday, and the VIP section was a shark tank of tech moguls and venture capitalists. The restaurant owner, Mr. Park, a man perpetually dabbing sweat from his forehead, approached her with visible tremors. "Sebastian Vane is here," he whispered urgently, his eyes darting toward the entrance like a man awaiting execution. "Table 1. Full service. No mistakes." The name, Sebastian Vane, rippled through the staff like a high-voltage current. Vane was the CEO of Vane Tech, a man whose public persona as a visionary was a thin veneer over a reputation for crushing anyone who crossed him. Maya nodded silently. She needed this job to pay for her mother's skyrocketing medical bills and her younger brother's tuition at MIT. What Vane didn't know was that Maya wasn't just a waitress. 3 years ago, she had been the NSA's rising star in cybersecurity. She spoke 5 languages fluently, including the nuanced technical dialects of the world's most sophisticated hackers. She had been the scapegoat for a massive intelligence leak, a breach that wasn't her fault but became her cross to bear, leading to her blacklisting from the government work she loved. Now, she memorized wine lists instead of code, waiting for a chance to reclaim her life. As Vane processed through the restaurant like royalty, his cold, assessing eyes landed on Maya, marking her as his evening's entertainment. Sebastian Vane saw Maya's name tag, glanced at her dark skin, and smirked. To Vane, the head of the notorious Vane Tech empire, the black American waitress was just another target for his amusement. The exclusive restaurant in Silicon Valley was his unofficial territory, a place where he displayed his power and entertained his associates. Tonight, he decided the waitress would be his evening's entertainment. He didn't know that Maya Thorne wasn't just any server. He had no idea that his attempt to humiliate her would not only backfire spectacularly, but would unravel a dangerous web he'd spent years weaving. This is the story of how arrogance crossed the wrong woman. If you enjoy stories of unexpected comeuppance, hit that like button and subscribe to see more powerful comebacks like this one. Vane entered the restaurant flanked by two silent men in expensive suits. They weren't bodyguards exactly, but men whose stillness suggested violence held carefully in check. Vane didn't walk. He processed through the room like royalty, granting an audience. He stood just under 6 feet tall, his body leaned beneath a tailored suit that cost more than Maya's annual rent. A watch that could pay for her brother's entire college education gleamed on his wrist. But it was his eyes that marked him as dangerous, cold, assessing, the kind of eyes that evaluated everything as property to be acquired or obstacles to be removed. The restaurant shifted in his presence. The staff stiffened, and conversations dimmed. Even the sound of the kitchen seemed to quiet, as if the food itself knew better than to draw attention. Maya approached table 1, her professional mask firmly in place. Not too friendly, not too distant, invisible, but efficient. It was a delicate balance she'd perfected through necessity. "Good evening, sir." "Welcome," she said. Vane didn't acknowledge her greeting. He didn't even look at her as he sat down. He performed the rituals of power, adjusting his cufflinks before finally looking up. His eyes landed on her face, then her name tag, then traveled down to her hands. A smile that never reached his eyes curved his lips. He was about to spring his trap. "You know who I am?" Vane asked, his English perfect but deliberately accented to emphasize his perceived superiority. "Yes, Mr. Vane. It's an honor to serve you tonight," Maya replied diplomatically. Vane turned to his associates and began speaking in a rapid-fire, highly technical dialect, a criminal slang of the tech underworld. He assumed she wouldn't understand a word of it. "She probably thinks AI is just chatbots and image generators," he muttered in the foreign technical tongue, making his companions laugh. "These Americans know nothing of true architecture, especially this 1-inch. Turning back to her, he switched to English, demanding a specific, off-menu data processing dish with the arrogance of a man performing the rituals of power. As Maya turned to leave, Vane stopped her with a voice like a hand on the shoulder. He had found his evening's entertainment and was about to spring his trap to humiliate her. He switched back to the complex technical dialect, speaking with particular venom. "Listen carefully, girl. I want the chef to prepare me a raw data set, marinated in chili oil with fermented scape," he sneered in the coded language. "Tell him it must be prepared in the traditional Gialla style, not the modern soul interpretation." He ended with a gratuitous cruelty, a racist barb about her small American brain being confused, suggesting she stick to serving fried chicken. He sat back with a triumphant smirk, his associates barely containing their laughter as they waited for the black American waitress to stammer in confusion. Maya stood perfectly still. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath as she weighed 3 years of swallowing her pride and being invisible against the necessity of her mother's medical bills. For 3 seconds, she said nothing. Then, she smiled. A sharp, knowing smile of someone who had just been dealt a winning hand. She squared her shoulders and looked Vane directly in the eyes, breaking a cultural taboo and instantly shifting the energy at the table. For a single perfect moment, Maya allowed herself to enjoy the look on Vane's face. It was a small victory, but after 3 years of swallowing her pride, of being invisible, and of pretending to be less than she was, it tasted sweeter than any revenge she could have imagined. Vane recovered quickly, but the damage was done. His authority had been publicly challenged, and his companions shifted uncomfortably, avoiding his gaze. The power dynamic had shifted, if only for a moment. "Who are you?" Vane asked in English, his voice now cold as steel. "Just a waitress, sir," Maya replied, also switching back to English. "Shall I put in your order?" Vane slammed his hand on the table, the crystal glasses jumping as heads turned throughout the restaurant. The veneer of civilization was slipping, revealing something feral underneath. "You think this is funny? Playing games with me?" He turned to Mr. Park, who had rushed over at the sound of the disturbance. "Where did you find this woman?" "She's a spy. I want her fired now, or your restaurant has problems." "Big problems." The threat hung in the air, unmistakable. Maya stood calm amidst the storm, though she knew she had made a critical error. Her pride had put her job at risk, a job her family desperately needed. But there was no taking it back now. Some humiliations you accept because you must, others you reject because you can't live with yourself if you don't. Mr. Park looked at her with anguish. "Miss Thorne, please go to the office." As she turned to leave, Maya heard Vane making a rapid phone call. "Find everything about a Maya Thorne. Former government worker. I want to know who she works for by morning." The words sent a chill through her. This wasn't just about a job anymore. Sebastian Vane was not a man who tolerated embarrassment, and he clearly saw her as a threat. The hallway to Mr. Park's office seemed to stretch forever, the minimalist lighting casting long, cold shadows against the polished concrete. Maya walked with her head high, but her mind raced with the implications of what had just happened. She had stood up for herself, yes, but at what cost? Her mother's treatment, her brother's education, her own safety, all of it felt like a collapsing line of code. The office was small and cluttered with invoices and employee schedules. There was a framed photo of Mr. Park with his family, a wife and 2 children, all smiling on the restaurant's opening day. She wondered if he had known what he was getting into when he accepted Vane's patronage, if he understood that men like Sebastian Vane never just wanted a table, they wanted ownership. Maya began gathering her things, certain she was about to be fired. She'd call her brother tonight and tell him they might need to look at cheaper schools. She'd call the hospital and see if they could work out a payment plan. She'd find another job and survive, as she always did. When the door opened, she expected Mr. Park, perhaps with security, to escort her out. Instead, an elderly woman entered, the quiet customer who had been sitting alone at the corner table all evening, sipping green tea and observing the room. She was in her 70s with silver hair and the ramrod-straight posture of a military officer. Her suit was expensive but understated, her presence commanding without being imposing. She closed the door behind her. "Miss Thorne," she said in a precise, technical dialect. "That was quite impressive." "Thank you, but it's cost me my job," Maya replied. The woman smiled and switched to English. "Perhaps not. My name is Director Elena Vance, retired NSA counterintelligence." Maya froze. Director Vance was a legend in intelligence circles. Her work in encryption during the early days of the digital Cold War was required reading during Maya's training. She was supposed to be living quietly in retirement, not sitting in a Silicon Valley restaurant watching Maya commit career suicide. "I recognize you from the Arlington Symposium 3 years ago," Director Vance continued. "Your presentation on polymorphic encryption was brilliant, and your analysis of data leak vulnerabilities was prescient. Your career, ending as it did, was unfortunate. You know about that?" Maya asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I know you were made a scapegoat. The leak came from much higher up, someone with more connections and more protection than a young lead analyst, regardless of her brilliance." She paused, studying Maya's face with keen, veteran eyes. "I also know Sebastian Vane is under investigation by both federal and international authorities. His legitimate AI firm is a front for unauthorized data harvesting and high-level industrial espionage. His arrogance makes him careless." Director Vance reached into her suit jacket and handed Maya a business card. It was simple, elegant, with only her name and a private number embossed in silver. "The Bureau Cyber Division has an immediate opening for a technical liaison. Someone with your linguistic skills and knowledge of certain individuals would be invaluable." Maya stared at the card as if it might vanish if she blinked. "Why would you help me?" "Because talent should not be wasted serving men like Vane. Because your agency made a mistake in discarding you. And because justice sometimes needs a gentle push." She smiled, a rare spark of warmth in her eyes. "Also, because the look on Vane's face when you deconstructed his code in his own dialect was the most entertaining thing I've seen in years." Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. It wasn't just about a job. It was the chance for redemption and to reclaim the life that had been stolen from her. But caution tempered her optimism. "Vane is dangerous. He's looking into me already. Let him look. By tomorrow, your security clearance will be reinstated. By the end of the week, you'll have federal protection. Vane is powerful in his circles, but even he doesn't challenge the government lightly. And Mr. Park's restaurant will be fine. Vane's influence is waning. He just doesn't know it yet. The director stood up. Call me tomorrow. We have much to discuss about your future, Miss Thorne, and about Mr. Vane's past. 3 months later, Sebastian Vane entered the secure federal building in Palo Alto, summoned for questioning regarding his business activities. The summons itself had been a shock, delivered not by a junior investigator, but by a senior official with a clear implication that refusal was not an option. He expected to charm his way through it, as he had many times before, using a few well-placed lies, strategic name-dropping, and perhaps a hint at the embarrassing data he possessed on officials. He had played this game many times and always won. The building was an imposing structure of glass and steel that reflected the tech-heavy skyline. Vane was escorted through security, through sterile hallways lined with corporate awards, and into a formal meeting room with a view of the valley. The room was designed to intimidate with its austere elegance and official seals. He expected an older man, perhaps someone susceptible to the usual threats or bribes. Instead, he found himself facing Maya Thorne, now dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, a federal credential hanging around her neck, seated at the head of the conference table with a thick digital file open before her. She was not alone. 2 serious agents in dark suits flanked her, and a recording device sat prominently on the table. Ms. Thorne, he stammered, his confident facade cracking. Special Liaison Thorne, she corrected. Please have a seat, Mr. Vane. We have much to discuss regarding your operations. The color drained from his face as she opened the file containing details of his organization that only an insider could know. Shipping manifests for hardware that had passed through customs with suspicious ease, encrypted bank transfers through shell companies, and logs of meetings with known data brokers in Seoul and Tokyo. How did you? Just a waitress with good ears, Mr. Vane, she said with a sharp smile. You should be more careful what you say in public. Or perhaps, you should be more careful who you try to humiliate. Sebastian Vane, the feared tech mogul who had built an empire on intimidation, sat down heavily. For the first time in his life, he was truly afraid. Across town, Maya's mother was receiving experimental treatments fully covered by federal insurance, and her brother was thriving at MIT. Maya Thorne had found her way back to her true calling, not by hiding her knowledge, but by using it when it mattered most. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe so you never miss a story, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're listening.